Yep.
Okay, thank you guys for coming tonight. Before we get started, I need to make a couple of disclaimers. The first one is, the first one is, this is not a function of the Republican Party. Not the state party, not the county party, not the birthday party. Nothing about the party. I am a Republican, have been for a really long time, but this is my event, not a party event, okay? No party money was spent on this, no party resources of any kind. This is just us. The other thing I need to let you know right up front is before we're done tonight, I'm going to make some of you mad. I need to warn you about that ahead of time. I'm sorry. I don't know how to get around that with the subject matter that we're dealing with. And speaking of the subject matter, is there anybody here that's not familiar, or at least have some kind of an idea of what's going on in the Uinta County Republican Party and the lawsuits and all that kind of stuff? Is there anybody that doesn't know about that stuff? So everybody's got kind of an idea anyway, a little tiny bit. And I have to apologize for that. And it's been very frustrating for us, me especially, because we haven't been able to talk. There's been litigation going on, and when that's the case, you have to be very, very careful what you say. Because, for example, if I was to say something that might be construed as attorney-client privilege, for example, then the other side can say, well, he's given up his attorney-client privilege. And now they can find out all our attorney strategies and whatever. So you really have to be careful what you say when there's active litigation going on. And so we haven't been able to say hardly anything. The litigation is still going on. Okay, the suit is not concluded yet. We think it's close, and we think all the filings have been done, and that kind of stuff, and we're just really waiting on the judge at this point to make his final decision. But I'm not going to wait any longer. This subject is too important and too timely to keep my mouth shut any longer, so I'm not going to. I'm going to tell you guys the story from my perspective and take it as that. It's my perspective. Everything I'm going to tell you tonight, I believe 100% in my heart to be true, and almost all of it, I have documentation to back it up. Okay? But just accept the fact that some of you are going to be leaving here mad at me. I titled my presentation, "The Truth Shall Set You Free," unless you're the one lying. Okay? We have been accused of lying and cheating and stealing and raping and pillaging and everything you can imagine for a year and a half now. And frankly, it's getting a little tiresome. So I need to lay a little groundwork. My wife and I moved to Wyoming about a little over 18 years ago. And we moved here for a specific reason. And this is part of that reason. Wyoming is touted to be the reddest state in the nation, the most Republican state in the nation. And I'm a Republican, my wife's a Republican, my daughter's a Republican. We're a Republican family, and we believe in the principles espoused by the Republican Party, and we wanted to live someplace where everybody else did too, because we'd feel more at home. And from everything we can learn, we're a homeschool family. We looked at the homeschool laws before we came here. They're pretty good. They're not great, but they're pretty good. We can work within them, so that's all right. We also wanted to start a raw milk dairy, little raw milk dairy. And so I looked at the food safety laws in Wyoming. And when you look at the statutes, it looks fantastic. Almost every one of them, it says repealed. There really aren't any. I thought, yes, I found my people, right? And when we got here and started looking a little closer into it, what we discovered was the reason all those laws were repealed was because they passed one to replace them, and that one empowered the state ag department and the state health department to be able to write any regulations they wanted to as it pertained to food safety. And regulate they did. Holy cow. We found out that as raw milk is concerned, and we started this in 2008, At that time, in Wyoming, I could milk my own cow, but I could not serve that milk to my children. What?
I'll have to start a business like that.
Okay. So we started digging into it, and there were other people in Wyoming that had the same kind of a mindset as us, and we kind of ended up bumping into each other and gathering together, and we created an organization, and we called it Wyoming Food Freedom. And I designed the logo. I just photoshopped a glass of milk into Pat McHenry's hand there. I was kind of proud of that. It took me like a week to do it. I'm not a computer guy. But anyway, we formed this organization and we started working on food freedom. We took the food rule, what they called it, the regulation, we took it to the University of Wyoming and asked a law professor there to read it for us and tell us what it meant in everyday terms. He did that, and he concluded that in the state of Wyoming at that time, not only was it illegal to serve raw milk to my children, but the way they wrote the law, it was actually illegal to make a sandwich in your own kitchen and then eat it in your car. The way they wrote the rule, now that it's hard to imagine. I'm going to say I couldn't imagine them enforcing that, but I can now, frankly. But it's hard to imagine, but that's where they ended up. Bake sales to raise money at the school were illegal. Potluck dinners at the church were illegal. Feeding the people that come to help you brand was illegal. All of this stuff was illegal because the bureaucrats got a hold of the rules instead of our legislators. So we started pushing back. And we, in 2015, 7 years later, got passed through the legislature and signed by the governor, the Wyoming Food Freedom Act, which says if there's only one transaction between the original producer and the end consumer of a food item, the state can't say a word about it. No inspection, no licensing, no labeling, no anything. The only food that doesn't apply to is red meat, beef, pork, and lamb. And that's the only reason that's not in there is because we're still fighting with the bureaucrats over that one. But we're not done yet. Anyway, Wyoming Food Freedom is where I got started in politics in Wyoming. And of course, going back and forth to the legislature, testifying at legislative committees, you run into other people that are working on other subjects, like the Wyoming Gun Owners. You're probably familiar with that organization. They're working on Second Amendment issues. I'm a Second Amendment guy. My battle is food freedom, but I'm a Second Amendment guy as well. Maybe them and I could get together and help each other out. Wyoming Right to Life. I'm pro-life. They're pro-life. Maybe we can get together and help each other out a little bit. Am I walking around too much, Biff?
No, I'm just having issues. You're good.
Okay. So what happened over time was these different groups got to know each other, and we all basically had the same problem. Why in Wyoming, when almost entirely Republican legislators, we can't get anything Republican passed? Why can't you do that? I mean, we all had the same issue, and that's what it was. So, in trying to figure out what was causing that, we got more involved in politics. Not so much the issues as politics, the guts of the matter. And we were all involved, or got involved, in the Republican Party. And what we found was that you and I are Republicans, but our politicians a lot of times aren't, okay? And the reason that they're not is they figured out years ago that we were, so if we were going to vote for them, they needed to pretend to be, okay? They're not going to run as a Democrat and win. They had to run as a Republican so that we, if we're not paying close enough attention, see that R and click the box next to it. I've been to a couple of campaign training schools. Number one reason a person picks a certain person to vote for is party affiliation, okay? Number one. Number two is negative campaigning. Everybody hates negative campaigning, but it's very effective, okay? And part of me wants to think, that's why I've been attacked so much for the last year and a half, is to negate my influence. I'm not running for anything, but I am involved, so part of it, I think, is just negative campaigning. You want to call what I'm doing tonight negative campaigning? Go ahead. Like I said, I'm not running for anything. I'm just trying to set the record straight. Alan Simpson, you guys know him, right? Icon of Republicanism in Wyoming, right?
Well, we won a governorship there in New Jersey, one in Virginia, by not talking about social issues. Who the hell's for abortion? I don't know anybody running around with a sign that says have an abortion. They're wonderful. They're hideous. But they're a deeply intimate and personal decision. And I don't think men legislators should even vote on the issue. Then you've got homosexuality. You've got don't ask, don't tell. We have homophobes in our party. That's disgusting to me. We're all human beings. We're all God's children. Now, if they're going to get off in that stuff, Santorum has said some cruel things, cruel things about homosexuals. Ask him about it. See if he attributes the cruelness of his remarks years ago foul. Now, you know, if that's the kind of guys that are going to be on my ticket, you know, makes you sort out hard what Reagan said, you know, stick with your folks. But I'm not sticking with people who are homophobic, anti-women, you know, moral values while you're diddling your secretary, while you're giving a speech on moral values. Come on, get off of it.
I'm on board with Alan when it comes to we're all God's children, 100%. Okay? But why is it that the most vulnerable and most innocent of God's children can't be afforded the protection of a male legislator? Why not? Isn't that what Republicans believe in? The right to life for everybody? All of God's children? Well, I know I do. And it seems to be a Republican theme. Apparently not to Alan Simpson. How about this guy? You know him? The godfather of Wyoming Republicans?
It's good to be back at the Council on Foreign Relations. As Pete mentioned, I've been a member for a long time and was actually a director for some period of time. I never mentioned that when I was campaigning for re-election back home in Wyoming.
Why wouldn't he mention it? Because he wouldn't have got elected. You guys know what the Council on Foreign Relations is? Here's the Wikipedia article, and it's really, really fuzzy. See if I can make it a little less fuzzy. Not very well. Well, let me just read this part to you here. This is U.S. Navy Admiral Chester Ward. He served as a Judge Advocate General, and he said the main purpose of the Council on Foreign Relations is promoting the disarmament of U.S. sovereignty and national independence and submergence into an all-powerful one-world government. That's what the CFR is about. Dick Cheney was the director of that. Does that sound Republican? Doesn't to me. Say politics makes strange bedfellows.
Thank you very much, Richard, and I am delighted to be here in these new headquarters. I have been often to, I guess, the mothership in New York City, but it's good to have an outpost of the council right here down the street from the State Department. We get a lot of advice from the council, so this will mean I won't have this far to go to be told what we should be doing and how we should think about the future.
Makes you cry, doesn't it? They say politics makes strange bedfellows. You won't find two stranger bedfellows than those two. Dick Cheney and Hillary Clinton. And of course, we've learned here recently that the apple doesn't fall very far from the tree, does it? Okay? I'm thinking, you know, the state party voted to no longer recognize Liz Cheney's status as a Republican. We can't kick her out of the party. You can't, I don't do hand signals, I'm not sorry. Oh, the county did too, yeah. We can't kick her out of the party. You can register in Wyoming as a Republican if you want to, period. So it's a symbolic gesture, but we no longer recognize her status as a Republican. Right here in Uinta County, it's not just national politics. We got the same problem right here at home. Clarence Branish served in the Wyoming House for one term from Evanston and ran as a Republican, was elected as a Republican. One of the bills he voted on is this one, House Bill 118. I think it was in 2011 or 2012, or 2011, it says up in the corner. What this bill would have done, and you'll see right here, it was sponsored by Alan Yagi, one of the sponsors. You guys are familiar with him, I'm sure. What this bill would have done is mandate that an abortion provider, a doctor that performs abortions, would have to make available to a woman seeking an abortion information regarding medical issues and psychological issues and those kind of things before they could perform an abortion. Didn't say she had to read it or look at it. Just said the doctor had to make it available to her. Okay? Clarence, that didn't fit in his political philosophy that an abortion decision should be an informed decision, so he voted against that. Most of the people on the nays, they're either Democrats or very liberal Republicans. How about this one? An act relating to marriage. This act would make it in Wyoming the law that a marriage is a man and a woman in a union. Okay? Again, pretty simple. Family values kind of an issue. You see the sponsors. I don't know if you're familiar with most of those guys, but Kendall Croker, for example, very Republican. Good man. I met him at the National Convention in 2012. And again, you can see that Mr. Branish didn't like that. Marriage shouldn't be defined. This is one that Clarence actually sponsored, and holy cow, investigative subpoenas. We have any lawyers in here? This would have created investigative subpoenas in Wyoming. Does everybody know what an investigative subpoena is?
Is it like a surveillance warrant?
It's kind of. You know what red flag laws are as they pertain to guns, right? This is the red flag law for the Fourth Amendment. Rather than I have to go to a judge and present evidence that convinces him there's enough probable cause to issue me a warrant so I can go search your house, now all I have to do is issue a subpoena, and I don't have to go search your house. You have to bring it to me, whatever it is I'm looking for. Okay? Absolutely, 100% unconstitutional. But then I found that that side doesn't pay a lot of attention to the Constitution anyway. Which brings me to 2012 in the Republican Convention here in Wyoming. This is where I actually got involved in the party more, okay? And it's also where I met Ron Michaeli. And frankly, he's hated me ever since. Because that year, you guys remember, there were a lot of candidates running for president that year. A lot of them. Big field. In Uinta County, it kind of boiled down to Mitt Romney and Ron Paul. Ron Michaeli was supporting Mitt Romney, and I was supporting Ron Paul. And at the convention, we would elect a delegate from Uinta County to go to the national convention and support whichever candidate they were bound to. So I was the Ron Paul candidate, and Jamie Bracken over in Evanston was the Mitt Romney candidate, and we competed for that position. During that convention, they asked us that were running to be the delegates some questions, and during that question and answer period, Ron Michaeli accused Ron Paul of being pro-abortion. So if he was pro-abortion, then I must be pro-abortion, and they didn't want me representing Uinta County because I'm pro-abortion, obviously, because I support Ron Paul. And I told him I had talked to Ron Paul personally. I'd met the man twice, and I talked to him personally about his opinion. Does anybody know what his position on abortion was in 2012, other than my wife? And my daughter. It was exactly, that wasn't Lisa, okay. Exactly the same as what the Supreme Court did 2 weeks ago. What they did 2 weeks ago, we could have had 10 years ago if we'd elected Ron Paul.
These powers aren't given to the Congress. I see abortion as a violent act. All other violence is handled by the states. Murder, burglary, violence, that's a state issue. So don't try to say that I'm less pro-life because I want to be particular about the way we do it and allow the states to prerogative. This is the solution. This is the solution, because if we would allow the states to write their laws, take away the jurisdiction by a majority vote in the Congress, you repeal Roe versus Wade overnight instead of waiting year after year to change the court system.
Have you heard what President Biden's trying to do now?
Executive order.
He issued an executive order today, but he wants Congress to reinstate Roe v. Wade through legislation. That's what Ron Paul was trying to prevent. Okay? Ron Paul pro-abortion? I don't think so. If you guys ever get a chance to hear his story, when he was an intern, where he was working, abortion was illegal, but that didn't keep him from doing it. And he tells the story of walking into a delivery room, and they had delivered a live baby. Well, it was supposed to be an abortion, but the baby was delivered live, and they took it over and set it on the shelf in the corner and just waited for it to die. And that's what colored Ron Paul's feelings about abortion, and they're strong feelings, believe me. What about his candidate? What about Mitt Romney?
Shannon snuck a little extra point in there that I want to address, and that is with regards to my views with regards to protecting a woman's right to choose. And I've been very clear on that. I will preserve and protect a woman's right to choose, and am devoted and dedicated to honoring my word in that regard. I will not change any provisions of Massachusetts' pro-choice laws.
I've had some creative children, and during this campaign season, one of them made a sign to put in front of my house. I'm LDS. A lot of people around here are LDS. Mitt Romney's LDS. She put a sign in front of our driveway that said, Ron Paul, more Mormon than Mitt. I thought that was pretty good. So we got involved in the Wyoming Republican Party, and we started working to try to do something about this. To try to make the Republican Party in Wyoming the Republican Party in Wyoming. Okay, and it took a lot of work, believe me. When I first got involved, my wife and I first got, Carl already sitting back there. He was already involved when I met him at that 2012 convention. As you know, he's defended in the lawsuit with us. But anyway, this is kind of where my wife and I got started, and our daughter followed shortly behind us. But we got involved in the Wyoming Republican Party to make the party Republican. And we started, and progress was slow. There was a woman named Tammy Hooper when we first started. She was the chairman of the state party. And she would lose her mind if anybody suggested making a Republican legislator accountable for his votes. She said, our only job is to get Republicans elected. And we said, but what if they're not really Republicans? Doesn't matter. They got an R behind their name, our job is to get them elected. So one man in the party was in charge of donating or divvying out campaign funds, and he was probably the most liberal guy in the whole party. He decided who got funds from the party for their campaigns, and it was always the liberals, which kind of explains how the legislature got so liberal, even though they were all Republicans, right? Anyway, after her, Matt Michaeli became the chairman, and he kind of, I got to give the man credit for two things. He's a campaigner. Holy cow. He just ran roughshod over everybody else that was running, almost bullied his way into the office. And fundraiser, that guy's a fundraiser. Okay? Yeah, he won by one vote, but still, he was not taking no for an answer. Pretty amazing. So during his tenure, like I said, he was a fantastic fundraiser. The problem we ran into is that some of the fundraising wasn't quite up to snuff. Some people might call it money laundering, what went on. We ended up being, the article says FEC fines Wyoming $52,000. That's not correct. It could have been so much more than that. The RNC, the National Party, got involved and kind of saved our bacon. They negotiated with the FEC, and this is where we ended up. Only $52,000. Okay, could have been much worse. Millions of dollars were funneled through our state party. Millions. Currently, Frank Ethorn, he's in his second term as as state party chairman. And you don't get re-elected, I should say, unless you're doing a decent job.
Just one comment about that couple $1 million we went through. That was done without
Oh,
any
yes.
knowledge of anybody.
Unilateral
in
actions,
the state
100%.
party. Nobody
Absolutely.
knew about it. Our state treasurer was placed in jeopardy of going to prison on that. And he didn't know a single thing about it.
Didn't know that.
And in fact, Matt tried to get him to sign some fraudulent documents covering up things, which he refused to do, but, nobody knew about that except for Matt.
Okay, Frank is our state party chairman now, and since Frank got on the helm, the party has gradually shifted more and more and more towards Republicanism, and we've actually started holding some of our legislators accountable. For example, now if you want to get money from the party to run as a Republican, if you're an incumbent, you have to have a voting record that's within 80% compliance with the party platform. Okay, Reagan always said if somebody agrees with the 80%, they're not your enemy. And so that's how we picked that number. If you vote with the party 80% of the time, we'll help you with your campaign. You can't say they can't run as a Republican. That doesn't work in Wyoming. The way the laws are in Wyoming, anybody that wants to run as a Republican can do so. We don't have to help them if they're going to vote the other way. If you're running and not an incumbent, you don't have a voting record, we ask them to submit to a survey and pledge to vote 80% with the platform. Okay? We don't think that's unreasonable. 80% worked for Reagan, works for us. Several incumbent legislators lose their seats. Last election cycle. Finally, we're making some inroads into the legislature. Several incumbents were exposed for their voting records, and their constituents rejected them. Yes, finally. Years and years and years, but finally, we're making the Republican Party Republican. And last year we made some decent inroads into progress in the actual, now remember we started with the party, trying to get the party back on the trails. Now we're actually affecting government. Success. The problem is, the other side, the ones that used to be in charge, they lost their minds. They went nuts. They formed an organization called the Frontier Republicans. Anybody not familiar with that term, that name? Okay. So they started up in Campbell County. Several of the old guard Republicans, Doug Camblin, you probably wouldn't recognize most of the names involved, but several people that have been, Deemer True, big name in Wyoming oil, and used to be in the Wyoming Republican Party, big name. He's involved. Well, we'll talk about some of them as we go. But anyway, they accused us of being unreasonable and obnoxious and radical and all manner of evil. And they were rational and respectful Republicans. So they called a press conference to announce their formation, and one of their founding members speaking at that press conference called us cockroaches that should be exterminated. I don't know whether that's rational or respectful, one or the other. It's got to be, right? Because he said so. Apparently so. Anyway, they got fired up, and they're wanting it back. They don't like this liberals getting kicked out of the legislature, so they're trying their darndest to get it back. Gail Simmons is a founding member of the Frontier Republicans. Joe McKinley, he used to be the chairman of the Natrona County Party and is a founding member. He's the one that called us cockroaches. Tom Lubnow, you might remember that name. He used to be the Speaker of the House. You guys remember Senate File 104? When the legislature tried to take all the powers away from the Superintendent of Public Instruction? Remember that? It ended up in the Supreme Court. They threw it out as unconstitutional. This was one of the driving forces behind that effort to strip Cindy Hill of her powers. We beat them back. We got it into court and got it declared unconstitutional, but no thanks to him. That was his baby. Speaking of which, did anybody, this just dawned on me very recently. When that was going on, who was in charge of the Wyoming Education Department? Anybody remember?
Crandall.
No.
Oh, well.
He was the director that they tried to replace her with.
Yeah.
I'm talking the Wyoming Education, Department of Education, what do they call it? I'm not sure that's the right title.
Oh, the school board.
The school board. Yes.
Ron Michael, I was.
Ron Michael, I was in charge. He was involved in that. You guys know that? I didn't until very recently. Anyway, Matt Michael, I think if you ask him, he would deny being a Frontier Republican, but he's way in deep with them. Way in deep. I'll show you that here in just a minute. And then right here in Uinta County, John Conrad. And I know he will deny it. But let you guys make up your own mind when I'm done, okay? My daughter, the one that's the artist that made the Ron Paul sign, she adjusted their logo for him. Turned it into a RINO. She also added a question mark after the word Republican. She's pretty creative. She's quite a kid. So that brings us to this last election cycle 2 years ago. And I call it the attempted coup because that's what it was. No other way to look at it. And a lot of people, and we at first kind of thought that it was a local group that was opposed to our leadership trying to take over the Uinta County Party. That's not true. It's a portion, a little piece of a statewide effort to overtake the whole Wyoming Republican Party. This is just this segment of it here in Uinta County. John Conrad is the face of that attempt, and he recruited a bunch of people to run for precinct position slots for the sole purpose of showing up at one meeting and voting for him for chairman. And I know this is true because about half of them have never been to a meeting again after that one meeting. They came and they voted for him and they were done. They had fulfilled their obligation. The problem with that is, well, one of the problems with that is, it leaves that precinct completely without representation on the central committee. Because there's only, in my precinct, there's one man and one woman. And neither one of them ever shows up. They went to elect John Conrad and they were done. So my precinct is never represented on the central committee. Some precincts have more than that. Some have 4 or 5 men and women. So they get some representation, but not their full allotment, hardly ever. You can run for any office you want to run. I don't care. You have every bit as much right to do that as I do. You have a right to vote for anybody you want to vote for. In the party, in the general election, in the primary, I don't care. That's not my call to make, and I will never try to make it for you. You get to do what you want to do. I just ask that you be honest about it, that's all. Now you can't see that. This is, so they sued us, and I think kind of what they forgot, it's not going to show up. What they forgot is that when anybody who's ever been involved in a lawsuit, there's what they call discovery. Discovery's fun. I didn't realize how much fun it could be. They demanded from us all the emails we sent back and forth before the election, before that meeting. Okay, probably 6 of them. So we said, okay, now you guys send us all yours. Whew, they had a lot more than we did, okay? This is one of them. And this is their potential list, and you guys can't read it, so I'll have to just kind of tell you what's on there, of people that they're going to run for precinct slots, who are then going to vote for John Conrad for chairman and the other slate of officers. Think you can make it work? Probably not. I wish you could focus in on this name right here. That's yours. It says Lisa Ayre. You guys know Lisa Ayre? She's more Republican than I am. Come on, people. Danny Ayre, who is the legislator from this district, is one of them. He's a plaintiff in the lawsuit. He is suing us. Okay? They assumed, I believe, since her last name was Ayre, that she must be on their side. I wish they'd have got her involved in the meetings. That would have been so much fun.
Too bad they didn't.
Anyway, this is the list of names, so we know who they were recruiting. Doesn't matter. You can recruit people. We do the same thing. Hey, you should run for precinct slot. You have the right mentality, the right political philosophy, you should get involved. You would be good. There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing. I don't fault them for that a bit. It's just kind of humorous, some of the names on that list. This is what we ended up with. The names in red are Republicans. The names in blue aren't. They're registered as Republicans, but they're not. They have proven themselves to not be Republicans, at least in my mind, and this is my meeting, so that's how it works. If you could see that other slide, one of the names on that list was Owen Peterson. He's here with us today. Okay? And you can see that on my slide, Owen Peterson's name is in red. Okay? Did they recruit Owen Peterson to run? I don't have any idea. I don't care. Owen Peterson ran for an office and got elected to it. Congratulations, Owen.
Thank you, sir.
You bet. Owen Peterson came to the meeting, was nominated to be the vice chairman for this side of the county, and you know what? He won that election too. Congratulations, Owen. Not a thing in the world wrong with that. Doesn't bother me a bit. Well, why is his name red if he was recruited by them? Because when they started their BS with their lawsuits and their character assassination and all the other crap they pulled on us, Owen said, "Oh, I'm not playing. I'm not doing that." He distanced himself from it, and I respect that. Owen and I are going to find something in the future to disagree about. It happens all the time. Carl and I. Sometimes he gets it wrong. Okay? That's okay. They will promote their position, and I will promote mine, and the committee will decide what its position is going to be, and then we're all going to just move forward. That's how it works when you're honest about it. Anyway, that was my judgment call on who's red and who's blue. This one really bothers me. I've known Dave Welling, and he's on both those lists, and his name's blue on my chart, and I've known him for a long time, and I used to think we were friends. Recently, Clarence Brandish wrote a letter to the editor, bad-mouthing us, talking about what kind of dirtbags we were and what all we did wrong. And it probably surprised you guys, but I have a hard time being quiet when things like that happen. So I responded to his letter. And in that response, I talked about the fact that half of those people ran specifically to go to that one meeting to elect their preferred leadership. And I mentioned names. David Welling is a precinct person. His wife also is, and his brother is. And they each have been to one meeting. They came to the election meeting, and we haven't seen them since. They had no intention of representing their precinct. They're there to elect John Conrad, and that's it. David Welling took exception to my letter and sent Biffy, the chairman, this response in an email. And he didn't realize he thought she had written the letter, not me, so he was berating her for it, but really it should have been directed to me because I was the author of the letter. Let me read this to you. Elizabeth, I believe you need to get your facts straight before you try and drag my wife Wendy and myself through your mud. We were never contacted by John Conrad prior to filing for committee persons. We filed because no one else at that time had filed. Now, his name was on that email, but so was Lisa Ayers. Did they ever contact you, Lisa?
Unfortunately, no.
They wised up before they got that far?
Yeah, I guess.
Maybe they did with him too. Maybe nobody contacted him. Let's keep reading. My wife Wendy Welling and myself did attend the meeting in person to elect the leadership for Uinta County. I've not been able to attend most of the meetings because I have conflict with city council meetings. She's on the city council in Evanston, but there are other members of the city council who are also precinct people that seem to be able to make it to our meetings.
Even to the ones in the valley.
Even to the ones over in the valley, yeah. His wife is not a city council person. I've never seen her at another meeting. His brother is not a city council person. I haven't seen him at any of the meetings. If he really couldn't make it, he can send a proxy. He hasn't done that. So, I don't know. Doesn't hold a lot of water with me. I request to see the attendance roll of all your meetings. I invited him to come to a meeting and we'd show them to him. Furthermore, the way the first meeting was run was not what we were expecting. where you could have free discussion or comments without getting shut down. There was one person at that meeting that I shut down, and that's because he got belligerent. Troy Nolan tried to tell me who was going to speak first in the campaign for state convention. I invited Jay Anderson to speak, and Troy Nolan jumped up and said, "No, I want to hear him first." Pointing at Carl, and I said, "Well, when you're in charge of this meeting, you can pick who gets to talk first. I'm the chairman. I'll run the meeting. Thank you very much." That's what I said. That's how I shut him down. Trying to understand why you felt the need to lie about my wife and myself. In a recent article I read by David J. Lay entitled 6 Reasons People Lie When They Don't Have to, Understanding the Motions of Pathological Liars. So I'm not just a liar, I'm a pathological liar. The number 2 reason he wrote could answer some of my questions of your motives. Telling the truth feels like giving up control. Often people tell lies because they're trying to control a situation or event and exert influence toward getting the decisions or reactions they want. The truth can be an inconvenient because it might not conform to their narrative. That's why I lied. I'm a compulsive liar because I want to control the narrative. Okay? And then this part really bugs me. Down the bottom. We will not be attending any more meetings. Damn. We will not be attending any more meetings because we do not feel safe in expressing our views without repercussions from the family. You know how many times I've been berated because more than just me and my family are involved in the party? Every time these people talk, they talk about my family and its involvement in the party. Because I'm involved, and my wife is involved, and my daughter is involved. Okay? Let's talk about precinct people. John Conrad and his wife. Scott Dickerson and his wife. David Wellings and his wife and his brother. Okay? I don't understand why there's an issue with my family being involved in the party when their families are as well. So what I did is I did a little scientific analysis of family involvement in the party in Uinta County, Wyoming. So my family, there's me plus my wife plus my daughter, that equals 3. In the Welling family, there's Dave plus his wife plus his brother. That equals 3.
No, Democrat might have been 6.
Common core. Okay? So it can't be the family, so it must be the involvement that's the issue, you think? Involvement. The Welling family, all 3 of them, went to one meeting for about 2 hours. My family has spent thousands of dollars, driven thousands of miles, attended hundreds of meetings over thousands of hours over the past decade or more. So the involvement isn't equal. That must be where the issue is. You think? This is an email. Like I said, we did this discovery thing, and we got all their emails. And this email, this actually was my email. David had emailed me asking for the minutes from the previous election. And I thought, well, that's a weird request. And in our party, when you're elected to chairman, you don't take position until the gavel falls at the end of that meeting. So the meeting where I was elected, I wasn't in charge. So I didn't have what he wanted. He wanted the minutes from that meeting, right? So I said, well, I could probably find them. I can dig them up for you. But if it would be easier, if you just have a question, maybe I can answer it for you. And I'm going to go digging for this minutes from the meeting from 2 years ago. Oh, beautiful. Thank you. That's what I keep around. So now you can see. So I said, that may take a little while to chase down. The current leadership didn't take over until after that meeting. Is there a question I might be able to answer? No, I wasn't able to attend. Wasn't able to attend. I'm sorry. Wasn't able to attend. Just wanting to keep up to date. Thank you. Okay, guess it wasn't terribly important. Then a little while went by and I got an email from Scott Dickerson. And he's asking some questions about the meeting. And I tried to answer him. And then he replied back, thanks for the invite and the clarification. I've always been told that regarding the election of new officers for the biennium, only precinct people or precinct committee men and women or their proxy can vote. Once the new officers are elected, they, the newly elected officers, can vote on any subsequent issues. So I thought, well, no, that's not quite right. They're not the new officers until the gavel falls, right? So no, they wouldn't be able to vote. Carl?
Well, I just want to clarify that prior to that, when I was chairman, Scott Dickerson was state committee man.
Yeah.
His wife Michelle was state committee woman, and the election was held exactly the same way. The
Same way
two
that
times
was
that I was chairman, I didn't run the election because I was running for office. First time I had our national committee woman, Marty Halverson, ran our county election. The second time, our county commissioner, Eric South, ran the election. And the election was done exactly the same way. Because I was running and I was voting as an officer, I didn't run the election.
Okay.
But Scott was there. He was elected.
He knows how it
So
goes. Yeah.
for him to say that he has always been told isn't exactly right.
Okay? Anyway, that's what I first thought, but then I got to think about it. What is all these questions about officer elections? What the heck? And then it dawned on me what they were up to. Oh, they don't think officers can vote. The bylaws clearly say it, but they don't think they can, and they were doing the numbers and thinking they got it whipped. And then, oh, wait a minute, maybe we don't. So now they're scrambling, trying to backpedal and figure out how they're going to still save their campaign and their election for office. Oh, so when I figured that out, I was at work and I called Carl and I said, Carl, do you have Brian Shuck's number handy? And he said, yeah, why? And I said, I told him what was going on. Brian Shuck is the party attorney for the state party. I said, can you call Brian and ask him for a statement that clarifies who can vote in an officer election in the Republican Party in Wyoming? So he did that. And those of you who were at the meeting, remember me reading that letter at the meeting. Okay, I'm glad I had that letter. This is where it came from. Back to Dave Welling. Okay, this is a letter or an email that John sent out just before filing for office. And this is a spreadsheet. I just keep making you work, don't I? This is a spreadsheet that is attached to it. And you can't really read it, but that's all right. Up here in the corner is David Welling's name, Wendy Welling's name, Gary Welling's name. This is their proposed candidates. This was before filing, but remember what Dave told me was he never talked to John Conrad before he filed for office. I think he did. You guys make your own call. Yeah, there you go. And let's see if I remember where they are. David Welling. Can't read good enough to have my glasses on. Anyway, they're on there. His brother Gary, and this one I've known Gary fairly well for quite a while. This one hurts a little bit more actually. Several months after this all started, Gary wished me a happy birthday on Facebook.
Used to be our bishop.
Yeah, we used to live in his ward. He was our bishop. He wished me a happy birthday. And I said, really? And he said, yeah, why? I said, well, it seems just a little bit disingenuous that you've been involved with a group that has been dragging my entire family's name through the mud for 4 months. And then you wish me a happy birthday. Just seemed a little weird, that's all. So I said, well, can't we disagree and still be cordial? Carl, are we cordial?
Absolutely.
Have we ever disagreed?
Oh, that was the
boy.
start of.
Yes, yes. We can disagree and still be cordial.
You can tell about
Okay?
that one.
But when you lie about me, and then you lie about lying about me, my miscongeniality award goes right out the window. Okay? I'm not cordial anymore. This is the officer slate they decided to run. And again, I don't have a problem with this. You can run any candidate you want, you can vote for any candidate you want. Okay? But you see here, it says Mike McGurn. His name is actually Mark McGurn. He's the vice chairman over on the other side of the county. And he was nominated in that meeting by Gary Welling. So don't tell me you weren't involved. And again, that's okay. Nominate who you want. Just don't lie about it when you're done. But the most damning thing, do you guys know they tried to get us all thrown in prison as well? Did you hear about that? They launched an investigation, asked DCI, the Department of Criminal Investigation, to investigate us. And that's like Wyoming's version of the FBI, you know what I mean? And they did a big investigation and then issued a report back to our county attorney. And it's public record. So we got it, and we read it. And John Conrad, in his enthusiasm to get us thrown in prison, wasn't paying close enough attention when he turned over to the DCI all the supporting documents that he had that were going to help them decide to put us in prison. One of the documents was the complaint that they filed with the court when they sued us. Okay? But he messed up, and instead of doing the one that they actually filed, he gave them what is apparently an earlier version of that document, the rough draft, if you will. Plaintiffs, Gary Welling. I don't know how Gary's name got on that document, and I don't know why it was taken off. I can speculate, but that's all I would be doing is speculate. Okay? But somebody, somewhere, at some time, had enough confidence in Gary Welling's support of their cause that his name ended up on the document suing us. I'm not cordial. Sorry. My biggest question, I guess, is why the cloak and dagger secret combination kind of stuff. People walk in the front door of the Uinta County Republican Party and we welcome them with open arms. We beg people to get involved. If you want to come play, we'll bring the ball. Please come get involved. Don't sneak in the back door and try to hit me over the head with something. That's all I ask. Look me in the eye. It's not that hard to do. These three, I'm sure you'll recognize them. John Conrad, Amanda Hutchinson, she's our county clerk. Eric South, he's the chairman of the Board of County Commissioners. They conspired to control the outcome of the election where officers were chosen. You know, I know that. Again, we're being sued, and we deposed some of them, and they deposed some of us. Have you ever been deposed? You know what that is? That's where your attorney asks you, they interrogate you, but it's not in court.
It is still under oath.
You're under oath, yeah. It's definitely, if you lie, you're still perjuring yourself. But it's not in the courtroom. The judge isn't there. There's you, the attorneys, and a court reporter. Okay, and we deposed some of them, and they deposed some of us. One of the people we deposed was Amanda Hutchinson. This is part of her testimony. Elizabeth, can you make this bigger for me?
Yeah.
Got my grandkids out there.
Which part?
The screen. There you go. You can stick around because you'll have to scroll for me, do anything. So our attorney, if you see in here, in some of these depositions, our attorney is Mr. Wilkins, Caleb Wilkins. Their attorney is Brandon Taylor. That's Ron Michael's nephew. I don't know if you knew that or not. In this particular one, it's just question and answers. But the questions are coming from our attorney. The answers are coming from Amanda Hutchinson. So why did you attend the Republican meeting on March 16th? Well, I guess several reasons. I'm a Republican, so I was interested in the process. Also, there had been a couple questions that had arisen about who could vote that night. You scroll her up a little bit. How did you come to be aware of these questions? How did you come to know of those questions or concerns about who could vote? It was first asked of me by Eric South. Why was Eric South, the county commissioner, concerned with the workings of the internal workings of the Uinta County Republican? It's a private organization. You guys realize that, right? We're not part of the government. We're private. We're like the Elks Lodge. We're not the county commission. Why is he concerned with how we're doing our voting? So I started looking into it a little bit, and then also John Conrad asked the question at some point, and those were relatively close together. And when you said Eric South and John Conrad asked those questions, how did they ask them? I mean, did they call you? Did they email you? Did they come to your office? I believe Eric South called me, and I do not recall with John Conrad. If it was over the phone in person, I'm sorry, I don't remember. Okay, I know why John Conrad was there. He got this plan to take over the party, and he just discovered that maybe his plan isn't going to work quite as well as he thought. But what's Eric South got to do with it? Why is he involved in this? It's a little concerning to me. So we see that they were, I'm sorry. So we see that they were pretty concerned early on. So can you talk to me about what you did to prepare for this meeting? I certainly researched the statutes. And she came to the meeting with the statute book open in her hand. You guys noticed that. She was in the back of the room. I conferred with my legal counsel, who's a county attorney, to try to make sure we were understanding. I took my election code book with me. Had it open in her hand. Did you read the statutes? Yes. Did you inform the outgoing chairman or any of the outgoing party leadership that you would be in attendance at the meeting? No. Why not? You're the election official for the county, and you think that you have authority over this election that's about to take place, and you're concerned that there's going to be impropriety involved, but you don't bring it up with the guy that's going to actually run the meeting? That's a little odd, isn't it? You wait till the night of the meeting. She did contact me, I'll be honest, she did contact me to ask me what time the meeting was. So I know she knows how to contact me, but she didn't ever ask anything about the procedure. She didn't say, Lyle, there's been some concerns raised. Are you aware of this statute? We could have talked about it. I could have explained it to her. But no, she tried to blindside me at the meeting under the direction of John Conrad and Eric South. Let's see. Then she just goes on talking about, well, maybe I did ask him what time it was. I don't remember for sure. Which brings us to the criminal investigation. When the election didn't go the way they wanted it to, John Conrad wrote a letter to the state party asking them to investigate and overturn the results because it just wasn't up to snuff. And he likes the word eminent. I don't know why. He keeps using it in the wrong place. I'm writing with an eminent request. Apparently that's the best request there is, or I don't know. Anyway, he used that word a lot. I'm writing with an eminent request. And he asked the state party to investigate. So they did. And they didn't just poo-poo it and gloss over it. We have an investigative committee in the state party that looks into allegations of wrongdoing. And this was turned over to them. And they interviewed us, and they interviewed them, and they investigated. And they came to the conclusion that we didn't do anything wrong. We followed the bylaws to the letter. Because that's what we did. Okay? So then they took it to the Secretary of State, who is the chief election official in the state, and he told them, I don't have any say on this. The very best may be the county clerk, but this isn't a state election issue, so I don't have any jurisdiction over it. So they went to the Attorney General. Attorney General told them the same thing. What are you bringing this to me for? So they go back to Amanda Hutchinson, the county clerk, who had been in on it from the beginning anyway, and she forwarded their complaint to Loretta Howison-Callis, the state or the county attorney, who asked DCI to investigate us. Okay? That's where Eric South lied to the investigator. Okay? Last night at the meeting in Evanston, I nominated Eric South for an award, and I'll just share it with you. Hopefully you guys can get on board with me and support me in this effort. I nominated Eric South for the most corrupt elected official in Uinta County, Wyoming. Okay? Partly because he used the influence of his office to try to affect the outcome of an election of a private organization. This is the report, interview Eric South, you see up here. And he told the investigator, Chairman Williams essentially told the group that he was the chairman and that the voting process would proceed with the way he wanted it to. Is that what I said? Anybody was there? Anybody remember what I said? I believe I said the elections are controlled by the bylaws. Now, if you guys don't like the bylaws can be changed. but they can only be changed at a convention. So if you don't like the bylaws, I invite you to come to the convention and change them. But as of right now, we have no choice. We must conduct our election according to those bylaws. That's not the same as we're going to proceed the way I want to. He lied to the investigator, trying to make me look bad. He couldn't bring up any facts, so he just tried to color the facts with his little verbiage, I guess is the word I'm looking for there. Okay? So, Loretta Howison-Callis, the attorney, brought that complaint to our Board of County Commissioners, and Eric South got the other two to go along with submitting that report to the Sublette County prosecutor. Now, Loretta said that she couldn't really prosecute us because she's a Republican and she lives in Uinta County. So that would be a conflict of interest. Okay, that was her story. Her story, she gets to tell it any way she wants. I believe, this is my story, and I'll tell it the way I want. I believe she knew she couldn't win. And she doesn't like not winning, but she didn't have enough something to stand up to the man on the end down there and tell him, I'm sorry, I can't prosecute him. He would have insisted. So instead of doing that, she asked them to submit it to another county and have a special prosecutor appointed so she wouldn't have to do it. So Eric South got the other two to go along with that. Okay? Now, how much they understood and how much they were involved, I don't know. And I'm not going to accuse them of anything I don't know that they did. What I do know is we elected them to govern us. And with that kind of authority comes awesome responsibility to get it right. And they didn't get it right. They are responsible, at least to that extent. They submitted the DCI report and a request to prosecute to a Sublette County prosecutor who took about a day and a half to decide, no, I'm not going to do that. We've heard from an attorney, not our attorney, but another different attorney, that the way that whole process was handled probably violated the law. We don't know that. We haven't investigated that. We're not vindictive. So maybe they broke the law, maybe they didn't. I don't know. But a legal person has suggested that to us. This is the letter from the prosecutor up in Sublette County declining the invitation to prosecute us. State statutes trump bylaws of up here. He says, no, I'm not going to do that. State statutes trump bylaws of a political organization. And I'll show you later where that's not technically always true, but for right now, let's accept it. However, in this case, Wyoming Statute 224105 does not specifically preclude the Central Committee from authorizing members of the County Party Executive Committee to cast votes to seat members of that committee. So the statute they used to try to get us prosecuted, the one they tried to get to prosecute us said, sorry, but that's not what the statute says. They didn't violate the statute. I'm not going to prosecute them. What would have happened if he decided to prosecute us? If we'd have been charged with a felony, and it was a felony, election fraud is a felony. If we'd have been charged, Carl probably would have lost his job. Just being charged, not convicted, just charged. In some positions, some jobs in the oil field, they're really strict, okay? I used to be a wireline technician, and I had to use tools that were radioactive. And we had a tool that had what they call a minitron in it, and that minitron could be taken out of my tool, and with very little modification, it would become the trigger for an atom bomb. Okay? So they wanted to make sure I was clean before they let me handle that kind of stuff. Okay? I had 5 separate federal agencies do background checks on me every year I worked at that job. Carl currently works in a similar situation, okay? If he'd have been charged with a felony, the chances are he wouldn't have passed his next background check, and he would have got fired for being charged with a felony. So that's how serious this was. What if we had been convicted? Do innocent people ever get convicted? Certainly they do. It's a felony, remember, so we would have lost our voting rights, we would have lost our Second Amendment rights, and we very likely would have ended up in prison. We played serious. This is hardball now. We're not messing around anymore. We're not arguing about anything. We're trying to destroy people's lives. And I don't want to sound dramatic, but that's not dramatic enough. That's exactly what they were trying to do, destroy our lives. Which brings us to their next step, lawfare. We're being sued. We've been under litigation for a little over a year and a half. And the original lawsuit asked the judge to set aside the election, force us to have another election, and admit that we had conducted the first one illegally. Okay? They also at the same time asked for an injunction to prevent any of the newly elected officers from taking any action until the court case was settled. Okay? When you ask for an injunction, you have to make a case. You have to explain why you need an injunction, and part of that has to do with how much harm can be done if these guys are running amok being officers when they shouldn't have been. But part of it is also your likelihood of prevailing in the underlying lawsuit. Okay? The judge denied their injunction, said no, things can go forward, and in his denial he said, your likelihood of prevailing isn't quite what you think it is. Okay? So their case, right from the start, was pretty weak. Right after they got that denial of their injunction, we got an offer to settle, which is kind of curious. Maybe our case ain't so good, maybe we better settle this. So they gave us a settlement offer which basically said we will hold a new election, John Conrad won't run, and moving forward we'll play by their rules, and they'll drop the lawsuit. We didn't do anything wrong. We're not going to settle. We're not going to admit we were wrong when we weren't. I've got nothing to hide. I'm not going to play your silly games. No, we're not going to take your settlement offer. What you guys might not know is that isn't the only lawsuit against Republicans in Wyoming that's gone on in the last couple of years. It's a theme. Like I said, this isn't just Uinta County. This is a movement statewide trying to take over the party away from the Republicans. I already introduced you to Joe McGinley, the chairman, or former chairman of the Uinta County Party. He sued the state party because we passed some bylaws at our state convention and he didn't like them. So he sued, claiming that the procedure that we used to enact those bylaws was illegal. Same thing as Uinta County, except this is bylaws and ours is officers. The procedure was illegal. So he sued the state party. He lost. State party won. There's nothing illegal about the way we're a private organization. We get to make our own rules. Come on, guys. Right? So that one didn't work. Tom Love now. He used to be the Speaker of the House in the legislature. And he's, well, until recently, he was the committee man from Campbell County. When in Wyoming, an elected official can no longer serve, they die, they move, whatever, the procedure for replacing them is that the party to which they belong chooses 3 nominees, and they send them to the next ranking elected official, and he or she chooses one of those 3 to fill the rest of the term. Okay, so for example, in Uinta County, if Danny Ayer were to get hit by a bus, we would have to replace him. The Uinta County Republican Party in Wyoming, or in Uinta County, I mean, would choose 3 nominees, and we would forward those 3 nominees to the county commissioners, and they would choose one of them, and that person would fill the rest of that term. You guys realize that not very long ago, our superintendent of public instruction, Jillian Balo, resigned because she got a better offer in Virginia. Kind of gotta wonder if there's not a tie with Cheney there somewhere. I don't know. Virginia, after all. Anyway, she got an offer in Virginia and took it. We didn't have a superintendent in Wyoming anymore. So the state party got together, had a meeting, picked 3 nominees. Several people applied and they interviewed them all. The state committee picked 3, forwarded their names to the governor. The governor chose one of them. He's finishing Jillian Balo's term. Tom Lubnow didn't like the one they picked. So what do you do when you don't like the outcome of an election or a selection process? You sue, of course. So he sued the state party over that.
In federal court.
In federal court, yes. Yes. He's more creative than the rest of them, I guess. So he went to federal court. It was thrown out. He lost. Nothing wrong with the process. You didn't like the results. That doesn't mean there's something wrong with the process. Which brings us to our lawsuit. There are 7 plaintiffs and 5 defendants in our lawsuit. These are the plaintiffs. John Conrad, Danny Eyre. John Conrad, I met John Conrad the night of the election. I'd never met the man before that. That's how involved he has been in the Uinta County Republican Party. I didn't know the guy.
But you wanted to be in charge.
But he wants to be in charge. Danny Eyre, you guys know him. He's your elected representative over here in the valley. He's a named plaintiff. We can get him to a meeting once in a while if we have like a legislative report or something like that, and we promise to be nice to him. And you think I'm joking? That is a requirement. If you guys will be nice to me, I will come. And being nice to him, of course, is not questioning his voting record at all. We can't do that because that's not being nice. Wendy Schuler, the senator, covers most of Uinta County, both Evanston and over here. Again, she's never been involved in the party at all. In fact, at a county forum a couple of years ago, she said, I don't get involved in the party politics.
But that was after.
I'm not interested in that. Apparently suing the party is not getting involved in the party. Ron Michaeli has been involved in the party a long time ago. My daughter has been involved for 11 years. She still hasn't met the man. He's suing her. She said, is that Ron Michaeli when I put this picture on there? She'd never seen him before. She didn't know who he was. Okay? But he's pretty concerned about the party here all of a sudden. And remember, he hates me from 2012 when I won the delegation to the National Convention. He never has forgiven me for that. Troy Nolan lives in Bear River. He was the mayor of Bear River for a little while. He's the one person I shut down at that meeting because he got belligerent. So people were nominating people for offices, okay? And 2 people were nominated for state committeemen, Jay Anderson and Carl Allred. And I was giving each of the people nominated a chance to say their little piece, answer questions, whatever, and then we would hold the vote, okay? When I got the state committeeman, I said, Jay, would you like to go ahead? Troy Nolan jumped up and said, no, I want to hear him first. And pointed to Carl. Shut up and sit down. Who are you? I'm running this meeting. That's who got shut down. Clarence Brandish, we were introduced to him and his legislation when he was in the Wyoming House, and Jean next to him there is his wife. She has been involved in the party since the lawsuit started. I didn't know her before that at all. So they're all terribly concerned about what's going on in the party, but we didn't know any of them before at all. Gail Simmons, I mentioned her. She is a founding member of the Frontier Republicans. Remember that? Okay. Remember the deposition thing. Let's look at John Conrad's deposition. You can see where I got these pictures from. Our attorney says, are you familiar with an individual by the name of Gail Simmons? His answer, I'm familiar with Gail only from the perspective of running into her at various legislative functions. So our paths cross from time to time. I know who she is, but that's pretty much it. Okay? Do you have any financial or business ties with Miss Simmons? Absolutely not. Does Ms. Simmons, to the best of your knowledge, render you any support or aid in your 2019 race for precinct committeeman? No, there was no financial support in my campaign for precinct committeeman. That's true. I'm almost certain that's true. When you're in for committeeman, there's no money involved. You go around and you tell your neighbors, hey, vote for me. Okay? That's how that works. So I'm sure that's true. There was no financial support. Was there any other form of support? No, not as it relates to this precinct. How about in any other context? I think that's a private matter at this point. Have you ever been deposed? You don't get to say that. Your lawyer can object. You know, if they're asking you something that's attorney-client privilege, your lawyer can object to that. But if he doesn't object, you're supposed to answer. Okay? And believe me, you have a good lawyer. He'll tell you when you don't have to answer. So he says, I think that's a private matter at this point. Our attorney addressing their attorney, Mr. Taylor, because he's just sitting there quiet. And John is waiting for this objection that never comes. Mr. Taylor, would you like to discuss that with the witness or the deponent? No audible reply. He doesn't know what to say. I can't say that, John. I'm sorry. You know. So Mr. Cotton, that's a more senior partner of that law firm, kind of sitting in the background, kind of, I don't know, riding herd on Mr. I don't know. Be nice now. He said in the back, he says, what's the question? You have that read back to me, please? So Mr. Wilkins, our attorney, says, yes, please read her back. And so then he says, so is your question whether she contributed to his campaign, which is something he'd have to disclose to the Secretary of State, which is true. Any political money has to be reported, whether you're a campaign candidate or a committee or a PAC or a party officer, you report every penny that goes anywhere. And so our attorney says, I believe it would include that, yes. And he says, no, I'm sure if he knows. And then Mr. Wilkins says, you know, please just strike the question so there's no possibility of confusion. Mr. Conrad, has Ms. Simmons, since January 1st, 2019, provided you any assistance or aid for any political race or endeavor in which you have been engaged? Ms. Simmons has provided no monetary support for my precinct committee pursuit. Is that the question that he was asked? No. He doesn't want to answer the question he was asked. He wants to answer some other question. So our attorney says, my question was much broader than that. I will ask the court reporter to reread it. She reads it back. His answer, that's a private matter. So his attorney says, I think if you would be more specific, perhaps that would be more instructive on the question as to what you're referring to. So he's telling our attorney, you know, narrow it down a little bit. Maybe we can get an answer for you here. So our attorney says, I can be. Unfortunately, the deponent is being somewhat evasive in his answers. I will get a little bit more narrow in this with the understanding that I think I've asked this question a couple of times to the same result. Mr. Conrad, is Gail Simmons providing funding for this lawsuit? And remember, we're not asking if Gail Simmons is providing funding for this lawsuit. We're really asking, are the Frontier Republicans backing this lawsuit? Because she's a founding member. She don't have deep pockets. She's not funding this lawsuit, but she has access to the purse strings. People that do have it. Okay? So Mr. Taylor objects to that on relevance, and then says, you can answer that question, Mr. Conrad, but you're not required to. The witness says, private matter, Mr. Wilkins. Okay, so Mr. Wilkins moves on. Are you familiar with the Frontier Republicans? As I mentioned earlier in my testimony, I've heard of them, and that is it. Remember that answer. I've heard of them. I'm aware of their existence, and that is it. Are you aware that Gail Simmons is one of the founding members of the Frontier Republican PAC? You guys know what a PAC is? Political Action Committee, right? Used to have greater flexibility with political money. I am not aware of that. To make the record clear, you are unwilling to answer the question of whether Ms. Simmons has provided funding to fund this current lawsuit. Is that correct? As I stated before. And then his lawyer objects, asked and answered. Our attorney says the question was never answered. He said it's a private matter. That's not answering that question, right? There was an objection made, and he was instructed that he could answer if he chose, unless I missed something due to technological reasons. This was on Zoom, is what he's talking about there. I don't believe there was a clear answer. He said it was a private matter. He responded. And I'm sure that that means he's refusing to respond to the actual question. His attorney says the record will be clear. Our attorney says, I don't want it to be clear in the future. I want it to be clear now. I just want to make sure that we all understand, is John Conrad refusing to answer the question, is Gail Simmons financing this lawsuit? And this goes on and on. I want to bore you clear to death with it, but it just goes on and on. I would like a binary answer, a yes or no answer. Are you refusing to answer? Yes or no? It's private. Obviously, John's a private individual because everything is private. So I'm not going to bore you clear to death with that, but we get to the very end of this 15 minutes. That's a private matter, Mr. Logan. That's like a theme. Anybody know who this guy is? He's one of my favorite guys in the whole world. His name is David Iverson. He's nod your head. Have you heard him? Yeah. He's pretty good, isn't he? He's an investigative journalist and a podcaster. He does a podcast out of Buffalo called Cowboy State Politics. You guys got to look it up. Just go to cowboystatepolitics.com, and they're all his podcasts are on there. He does about 3 times a week generally. Unless something special comes up, then he'll do an extra one, but he's great. About a week ago, well, let me do this first. This is a screenshot of a back and forth that Gail Simmons and David Iverson had on a Facebook page of a friend of ours. Gail Simmons, David, they were arguing about whether or not there was election fraud in Wyoming. David Iverson, you state, we know there is some fraudulent activity. If you have evidence of that, have you reported it to the clerk? David Iverson says, yes, Gail. Have you stopped meddling in lawsuits against your own party? She says, thank you for acknowledging that I'm a Republican. And 2, I will stop pushing back on the county and state parties when they go back to honoring Republican principles. Did she answer the question for John Conrad? Yes, she's funding the lawsuit. When she said that, there was only one lawsuit left in Wyoming. The other 2 had already been settled. I will stop pushing back when they stop being mean to me. Okay? She's funding the lawsuit against us. There's no question in my mind whatsoever.
She's the funder.
The funder. She doesn't have that deep a pocket, but she does have control or influence over the purse strings of those that do have deep pockets. Tom Lubnow. Tom Lubnow is the one that sued the party, remember, over the Secretary of Public Instruction thing. He's also one of the driving forces behind that whole Cindy Hill debacle. He's also a founding member of the Frontier Republicans. So we asked John Conrad about him. Let's see. In addition to Mr. Matt Michaeli, up here we talked about Matt Michaeli, you also had conversations regarding your concerns of the election with Mr. Tom Lubnow, correct? Now you guys got to kind of understand the position that this question puts John in. It's not a comfortable position to be in. He was, the phrase I always like to use is a coyote crapping peach pits. That's what he looked like. Okay. Think about it for a minute. If he says no, he's perjuring himself, right? Because he does. If he says yes, now we've connected him to the 3rd member of the Frontier Republicans that he claims to have just a passing awareness of. If he tries to do the private thing, like he did with Gail Simmons, he doesn't want to put in our minds the idea that he has a private relationship with Tom Lubnow. Right? Right? So what can he say? Remind me of who Mr. Lubnow is. So our attorney says, or he says, the name sounds familiar. I can't place it. So as you stand here today, do you have any recollection of any communications of any form in the past with an individual by the name of Tom Lubnow? Can you remind me, Mr. Wilkins, who Mr. Lubnow is? Just can't place it. Gail Simmons, at or about that time, had communicated with Tom Lubnow regarding his opinion as to the allegations set forth in this suit. His answer, as per, I believe, your Exhibit G. Exhibit G is an email where Gail Simmons and John Conrad discussed Tom Lubnow's advice that they go to the paper. Okay? So when he asks about the communication, at around that time, you and Ms. Simmons communicated with Mr. Tom Lubnow regarding the subject matter of this lawsuit. That is correct. Conversation occurred over the phone, did it not? Myself and Mr. Reynolds, yes. And your conversation with Ms. Simmons and Mr. Lubnow also occurred over the phone as opposed to email. No. I believe that was an email communication as well with that group that you just mentioned. To the best of your present recollection, what was the substance of that communication? Specifically, my belief in the impropriety and or loss of integrity with the recent election on March 16th. And what was Mr. Lubnow's opinion as to those averments? If I recall correctly, there I believe that he agreed that I had not conversed with Mr. Lubnow, but I have not conversed with Mr. Lubnow specifically regarding this case post the filing of the lawsuit. Earlier you testified that you were not aware of who he was. And now it's your testimony that you do indeed recall Mr. Lubnow. I wish you could have seen his face. It was funny. So let me give you the Reader's Digest condensed version of this back and forth. Do you know who Tom Lubnow is? Boy, that name sounds familiar. So when you were conspiring with Tom Lubnow and Gail Simmons to muddy the reputations of the officers of the party in Wildfile with Nick Reynolds, was that a phone call or an email? Oh, that was an email. But I thought you didn't know Mr. Lubnow. Oh, Mr. Lubnow! Yeah! Come on. It was born at night, but it wasn't last night, for Pete's sake. Did he give you any legal advice? No. Let's move on. So here's the email in question, Exhibit G, the emphasis. I'm sorry, my mind goes weird places sometimes. You've heard of the notorious RBG? Notorious Exhibit G. I'm sorry. This is the email he's referring to between Nick Reynolds, the reporter, Gail Simmons, Tom Lubnow, and John Conrad. He knew John Conrad, or he knew Tom Lubnow, no question. And that's the rest of it.
Lyle, can I just add something?
Yes, you can.
Nick Reynolds knew
Oh, yes.
we were being sued before we did.
Yes, Nick Reynolds was a reporter for Wildfile, and he was aware of the lawsuit before the defendants in the lawsuit were aware of it.
That's how we find out.
Yeah, we learned from Wildfile that we were being sued. Here's my buddy again, David Iverson. His podcast about a week ago was very interesting. Anybody know who this guy is? His name is B. Wayne Hughes Jr. He inherited billions of dollars from his father. His father had the largest self-storage business in the country, in the world, I think. And he died, and this guy inherited it, billions and billions of dollars. And then he moved to Wyoming, lives up by Jackson, from California, bought the Cowboy State Daily, which is a newspaper, opinion paper kind of thing, and it decidedly turned left when he took over the helm of it. But he's involved himself in Wyoming politics, and again, I don't begrudge anybody getting involved. The more involved, the better, as far as I'm concerned. But anyway, that's who this guy is. And last Saturday, David Iverson told us a little something about it. Wyoming businessman and philanthropist buys Cowboy State Daily. So this is an article talking about him purchasing that paper. You know who this guy is? Deemer True, I mentioned him earlier. really involved years ago when the party wasn't Republican. And he wrote an opinion piece in the Cowboy State Daily praising Liz Cheney. Okay, so I know what side he's on, right? So that's Deemer True. Keep him. You got to remember these people now. Matt Michaeli, we know about him, right? He's the son of Ron Michaeli, the local rancher, and the former chairman of the state party, and the guy that got the party in all the trouble over the money laundering stuff, and direct ties to the Frontier Republicans. Did I cover it all? This is his father, Ron Michaeli, lives here in Bridger Valley. Been involved in politics for a long time, obviously. Hates my guts ever since 2012. Guys, does this look familiar to anybody? I'm sure it does you, Owen, right? If you're running for office, or you're involved in party, or PACs, or candidate committees, or any of that kind of stuff, you have to report where every nickel comes from and where every nickel goes. And this is where you do it. The Wyoming Campaign Finance Information System. If you want to go look at it, it's on the Secretary of State's webpage. See down here where it says research tools and reports. If you go in there, you can learn some interesting things about PACs, candidate committees, different kinds of things like that. So let's go take a look. This is a list of the Wyoming PACs, and you have to have at least 2 people to make a PAC. You have to have a chairman and a treasurer, okay? You can have more than that, obviously, but you have to have at least those 2. For example, the Wyoming Conservative Alliance is a PAC, and they promote conservative ideals, conservative principles, conservative candidates. Their chairman is Jesse Campbell, and their treasurer is Elizabeth Jackson. Okay? Biffy is the secretary of that PAC. If you go down a little bit and you go to this next PAC here, the Wyoming Hope PAC, the chairman is Deemer True. Remember, we met him. And the treasurer is Matt Michaeli. We all know who he is. All right? So, David Iverson is kind of wandering through Waisifas, and he stumbles across something. Can you blow that up just a little bit? I'm sorry. I'm running you ragged here on it. This is the contributions to that PAC for the 2020 election cycle. Okay? Just a little bit smaller.
I can't do that.
Okay. That's close enough. That'll work right there. B. Wayne Hughes gave the PAC $50,000. B. Wayne Hughes gave the PAC $56,000. Peter Nicolason gave him $500. Joanne True, remember that last name True, Deemer True, Joanne True, gave the PAC $5,000, and then B. Wayne Hughes gave the PAC $150,000. $256,000, $250,000, B. Wayne Hughes gave one PAC. Okay, I don't mind. Playing by the rules, right? That's the way. If I had billions of dollars, I'd probably spend it on stuff like this too, only the other candidates. If you go to another page on this same site, you can see where they spent this money. And these are the candidates that they donated to. Now at this time, they've raised it since then, but at this time, individual like you and me can only contribute $1,500 to a legislative candidate in Wyoming. That's the max. I think now it's $2,500, but with he then it was $1,500. So you can see that all these candidates were given, all of them say $5,000 over here. And if you're familiar with any of these names, they're probably the most liberal members of the legislature. Pat Sweeney for House. The man was a Democrat about 15 minutes before he filed to run for office. You're chomping at the bit, Carl. Go ahead.
I just want to say that every single Democrat in the Wyoming legislature votes more the Republican Party platform than Pat Sweeney does.
Yes.
He is rated less than every single Democrat.
Danny Ayer isn't running for re-election this time, but up there a little ways, his name's on the same list. Okay. And he's suing us, remember? Which side's he on?
Hey, well,
Yes.
if you look at that Wyoming Hope PAC,
I'm gonna go get
not one single conservative in the Wyoming legislature received a dime from it.
And that Joanne True, that's related to the Deemer True, she started a PAC too. And her PAC is promoting women in government in Wyoming. And she donates money to Democrats running against conservative incumbent Republicans.
Women.
Because they're women. The party censured her for that too. She's a party officer, okay? She's a committee woman from Natrona County, and she formed a PAC that supports the candidacy of Democrats running against incumbent Republicans. Go ahead, Carl.
Just one comment on that. If she had been anybody, I mean, any of you guys or anything, the party wouldn't have done anything. But because she was a party official,
Right.
donating to liberal Democrats, that's why
She
she got the
wasn't donating.
censorship.
She was organizing an entity that's purpose was that. She didn't pull out $1,500 and give it to a Democrat. She orchestrated an attack on conservative incumbent Republican legislators. That's what she did. That's the only way you can describe it. Now here's what David Iverson found. It's a 2022 election cycle now, right? The reports aren't due yet. It wouldn't even occur to me to look at 2022 yet until the reports came due, because I didn't think there'd be anything in there. But he did. He changed this search to the 2022 election cycle, and there is one entry. The Wyoming Hope PAC, chaired by Deemer True, whose secretary is Matt Michaeli, gave Ron Michaeli $5,000. Ron Michaeli's not running for anything. Gave him $5,000. Category is legal. 6/21/21.
Would you tell me again where that jump off page is, where you read it first?
Okay, so you go to the Secretary of State's page. You click on elections, campaign finance, and then this page will come up.
Thank you.
And then if you click on research and reports, then you can find the PAC information. But there's also a button that says contributions and a button that says expenditures. And that's where you find this information. The Wyoming Hope PAC gave Ron Michaeli, who's not running for anything, $5,000. His son is the secretary for legal. 6/21/21. Less than a month after our lawsuit was filed, and they denied their injunction. Again, I'm speculating. My story, I'll tell it the way I want. They said, we'll file a lawsuit and we'll get an injunction and they'll back down. They filed the lawsuit, they failed to get the injunction, and we hired an attorney. And they panicked. We're gonna have to pay for this. No, they're not. B. Wayne True's gonna pay for it. The Frontier Republicans are gonna pay for it. Who's paying our side of this lawsuit? Remember, they sued us. The decision was made by them. It happened to us. Who's funding our side of the lawsuit? Us.
Well,
Right.
just one comment. Deemer True did make the comment when Natrona County first filed their lawsuit against the state party. He said that he would fund any lawsuit against the Republican Party.
Yeah. And that man's got deep pockets. Okay? We have expended, now remember, there are 5 defendants in this lawsuit. There's me, there's my wife, there's my daughter, there's my friend, and then there's the party. The Uinta County Republican Party is the named defendant in the suit. So far, we have spent $22,000 on defending ourselves against this lawsuit. Half of that, $11,000, has come from party funds, which we are so lucky we have Elizabeth as our chairman, because she is the greatest fundraiser that ever lived in the Uinta County Republican Party. If she hadn't done such a fantastic job, we would be deeply in arrears to our attorney. But the party has paid $11,000 and the four of us have paid $11,000. Now, people have helped us as well. Not B. Wayne Hughes. Not $5,000. Every once in a while, somebody will come up to one of us and say, hey, hang in there. Let me help you a bit. They'll give us $50, $100. My gratitude knows no bounds. And no, I'm not asking for contributions. I'm just saying the grassroots and us are funding our side of the lawsuit that happened to us. Deep pocket liberals are funding their side of the lawsuit that they chose to do. Okay? Blow that up for me a little bit. This is a letter that John Conrad. So, again, I got to tell you a little bit of the story. They could see that the judge wasn't leaning very far their way. There's been some judgments and some rulings and stuff that he has used certain words that has shaken their confidence in their position a little bit. And whenever that happens, we get a settlement offer. So not too long ago, we got another settlement offer. And in this one, he just wants a simple answer to his question, is what we did legal. That's all he's asking for. Just a simple answer to that question. Okay, so now, so far they've asked me, remember the emails, they asked me how it's supposed to work, and I gave them a copy of the bylaws and showed them how it's supposed to work. They've asked the state party chairman, the state attorney, the state party attorney, and our state parliamentarian. They all didn't give them the answer they wanted. So they went to the Secretary of State, didn't get the answer they wanted. They went to the Attorney General and didn't get the answer they wanted. They went to the Sublette County Prosecutor and didn't get the answer they wanted. So they're suing us to try to get the answer they want. All he wants is a simple answer. Just somebody please answer this question for me. We have. Everybody has. It's not that he wants an answer, it's that he wants the answer. And he's not going to get it because it's not the right answer. Again, Sublette County, don't got to blow it up, we've already seen it once. Sublette County prosecutor said, nope, they didn't, no law was broken, I'm not going to prosecute. This is from the denial letter when the judge said, no, we're not going to send these, they tried to send some questions up to the Supreme Court to get the Supreme Court because they knew our judge wasn't leaving their way. And he turned down their request to do that. And I might be able to read this. Article 1, and we're talking about election code here. Article 1 does not include language that would suggest how the County Central Committee should go about the process of electing the chairman, the committeeman, and committeewoman of the officers. So in other words, the statute doesn't say what you say it says. Okay? This court, a basic tenet of statutory construction is that omission of words from a statute is considered to be the intentional act of the legislature, and this court will not read words into a statute when the legislature has chosen not to include them. Article 1 does not state how voting should be accomplished at the meeting. It does not state, as the plaintiffs suggest, that only members of the County Central Committee may vote at County Central Committee meetings. It does not state what the plaintiffs say it states. He answered their question already. He hasn't ruled yet, but he's already answered their question. If that's all they want, we should be done. Again, their question was, are former officers who are not elected precinct committeemen permitted to participate in the election? Former officers? I wasn't a former officer at that time. I was running the meeting. I was the current officer. I was the chairman of the party until I dropped the gavel at the end of that meeting. Former officers didn't vote. Current sitting officers did, because that is what's mandated by the bylaws. Nothing in Wyoming Statute 224105 addresses who may participate in the election of the County Central Committee's representative to the State Central Committee. In fact, nothing in Chapter 4, Article 1 of the Election Code addresses who may participate in the election. So again, he's answered their question. No, they didn't break the law. Now, you can imagine that this isn't the only place these kinds of questions have come up in court. And there's a mountain of case law that you can go look to see whether or not they even have jurisdiction to legislate in this area. And I give you a hint, they don't. Several years ago, there was a case out of Utah, the Utah Republican Party v. Cox. And it was about how they selected their candidates. You know, they have a caucus system down there instead of a primary like we do. And the Mitt Romneys of the world were arguing with them. And so it went to court. And it was settled at the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals, which is just one level below the Supreme Court. And it's the circuit court that has jurisdiction over Wyoming. So this same court would rule, if this case went to the Supreme Court, this is the court that would rule. And from their decision we read, the distinction between wholly internal aspects of party administration on one hand and participation in state-run state finance elections on the other is at the heart of this case. When a party selects its platform, its chairman, or even whom it will endorse in an upcoming election, the state generally has no more interest in these internal activities than in the administration of the local Elks Lodge or the Bar Association. When the party's actions turn outwards to the actual nomination and election of an individual who will swear an oath not to protect the party, but instead the Constitution, in other words, a legislator, a governor, something like that, right? And when the individual ultimately elected has a responsibility to represent all the residents in his or her district, the state acquires a manifest interest in that activity, and the party's interest in such activity must share the stage with the state. So what is the answer to John Conrad's question? Does the party have to follow the law when they're electing their chairman? And what's the answer? The answer is no, but we did anyway. We didn't have to follow the law, but we did. Everybody has said they didn't break the law. The 10th Circuit says we could have if we wanted to, but we didn't. Okay? Government is not reason. It is not eloquent. It is force. Like fire, it is a dangerous servant and a fearful master. Never for a moment should it be left to irresponsible action. I would submit to you that these people have engaged, and others have as well, I'm certain, but these I know have, in irresponsible action. Action that could very well have destroyed my life, my friend's life, my wife's life, and my daughter's life. Irresponsible action. And I would submit that these people should never, ever, ever be entrusted with any measure of political power, because they're not responsible enough to handle it.
Why are some in red?
I did that so you could separate them.
Oh, okay.
Every other one's in red. Okay? If you'd like that list, I can supply it to you. That's just a visual. These people are the people that are running for precinct committee slots in Uinta County, Wyoming. And I've got copies of this if you're interested in having them, that we know are actual Republicans. Now there aren't enough people there to fill all the slots. There's some slots that we don't know somebody that we can trust to be a Republican running in that slot. And there are undoubtedly people running for slots that aren't John Conrad's minions, that are just as good Republicans as you and I are. And I'm sorry they're not on the list. But I don't know. And frankly, this last go around, it were some of the people who attacked us, I thought, were my friends. I thought they were Republicans. I thought they would play fair. You don't have to agree with me, just be honest and play fair. Other people who should have known better, other people who did know better, stood by and were silent and wouldn't expend even a breath in our support to defend us. So if I don't know that you are a true blue, honest, want to help build the party Republican, you didn't make this list. And again, I'm sorry if that description fits you and you're not there, I just don't know. And I can't take a chance. Okay? Some precincts have a lot more seats than others. I live in Bear River. We have 1 man and 1 woman. Okay? I think the biggest one has 6 men and 6 women. Is that right, Elizabeth? 8. Oh, that's right. We had such a massive voter turnout last election that we got a whole bunch more.
6 and 6.
6 and 6. So I was right the first time.
6, yeah, 12 altogether.
Yeah, 6 and 6. 6 men and 6 women. Anyway, if we don't have 6 men and 6 women to fill them seats, my advice, and you do what you want, I'm not going to browbeat you into voting the way I want you to vote. My advice would be, if you can't trust them, don't vote for them. Just because your ballot says vote for 4, doesn't mean you have to vote for 4. You can vote for the 2 you trust. If you don't know who to trust, if I've gained your trust tonight, you can go off my list. Okay? But if you don't know who to trust, write somebody in. Leave it blank. If you cast a vote for one of them, you're hurting the cause. So just leave it blank if you have to. If you know the person and you believe that they are honest, vote for them. They don't have to be on my list. You know them. You trust them. You vote for them. These are the ones I trust. That's all I'm saying. If I've earned your trust, you have enough confidence in what I'm telling you, feel free to go off my list if you don't know. But please, if you don't know, don't mark their name. You just don't know what you're getting yourself into.
Even if you recognize their names.
Yeah, and you will recognize their names. Like I said,
A couple questions. Go ahead.
I'll stay all night and answer all your questions and
Can I
just,
say one thing about people?
yeah.
Okay, so all over the state, there's been a huge influx of people signing up, for people that are signing up for precinct things. And so a lot of us that have been involved started looking at those names. We also compared it to the list that Liz Cheney sent out of her leadership in the state of Wyoming. We talked to some of those people, the chairman in Fremont County, the chairman in Lincoln County, people in Campbell County, people in Sheridan. And they're finding that this huge influx of people are from people that support Liz Cheney. And what she is trying to do is she's trying to take over the grassroots, the county parties, so that she can take over, have her supporters take over the state party, because she absolutely hates the state chairman. Absolutely hates him.
Almost as much as Trump.
Almost as much as Trump. But that's what they're trying to do. So, there's over 100 people that have signed up to be precinct members. And in most years, I'd be ecstatic. But I know for a fact that Liz Cheney supporters have been recruiting people to run for precincts in Uinta County. I know that for a fact. I also know that it's happening all over the state.
Carl?
Just one comment with, and Jana mentioned several of the counties where we know that there's an attempt to take over the county parties. The Frontier Republicans have stated amongst themselves that their intent is to take back control of the state central committee and to reinstall Matt Michaeli as chairman.
Hope they can afford it.
You know, well, there are a couple things that Matt Michaeli did besides the $52,000 and millions laundering. The one meeting that we have, so we changed the way that the state party gives campaign funds, and now the entire central committee votes on who gets those funds. So at the one meeting that we did that, where Matt Michaeli was chairman, he had a list of amounts to give to people, and he was advised by both our treasurer and myself that we didn't need to, some of those races we already had won. They were basically, there was no chance of a Democrat winning, and we didn't need to spend that money. But Matt's intent was that he would have the legacy of spending more money than any other chairman in the history of the Wyoming Republican Party, which he did, and almost bankrupted the party. The other thing is, when he first hired an executive director, now, remember,
You're kind of getting in the weeds here a little bit, Carl.
well, okay, but I just want to state that, you know.
We don't want that to happen, is what it all boils down to.
When he was advised that he needed to bring stuff to the central committee, he looked me right in the face and he says, I'm the chairman and I can do whatever I want.
What Janet was talking about, this happening all around the state, and Cheney supporters recruiting. Remember, I mentioned that most of these people that John Conrad recruited came to the one meeting, and we know that that's happening again as well. Joey Bell, she used to be the mayor. She used to be the mayor over in Evanston. She was up on Red Mountain over in Evanston, recruiting people to run for precinct slots by telling them, you only have to go to one meeting. Which meeting you suppose it was she was talking about?
The election meeting.
The election meeting, exactly. Okay, questions?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Are the precinct people that we are talking about who are angry, are they still running again this time?
Some of them, not all of them. The Welling brothers are not, but some of them are, yes.
The second, how do you get your name on that ballot to become a precinct?
Okay, the filing period for this election season is over. You could mount a write-in campaign if you know your neighbors and you want to knock on that many doors. It'd be tough to do.
No, I just wonder.
The process is in May of even-numbered years, of election years, the last half basically of May is the filing season. If you want to run for a local office, like a precinct person, you file at the county courthouse with the county clerk. If you want to run for a higher office, like a legislator or something like that, you do it through the Secretary of State on the same website where that campaign finance thing is. You can file for office on there. If you want to run for president, that's a little more complex.
I'm not ready for that. Yes, where can I get this list of U.S. Cheney's people?
Oh, they're her leaders of the county?
Yes, that you said you
She's
were
not
going
gonna
to
share that with you.
the blacklist, the list of people I don't want to vote for.
Okay, so
If you would, you gotta give us your email, we could,
we can send it to you, but.
do you have it somewhere?
If you get the list that Lyle has,
Yeah.
that we know.
If you look at the list of people
they're not
running,
Cheney people.
Okay.
and if you look at my list, everybody that's not on that list would be on the other list.
Well, I don't know.
Maybe, you're right, I stand corrected, you're absolutely, I don't know them all. So there's possibly good people on that list too. If you want to give Janet your email, we'll get you that list. That's easy.
You've got nobody from Lyman on that list at all, which means you haven't talked to them. Which means you're just making an assumption. So I'm just saying to you.
No, say what you want.
Is that, first of all, your presentation was excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Let's give them a hand. What do you say? That was really good. But at the same token, everyone on that list is not who you say they are necessarily. With nobody in Lyman or anything like that,
Well,
that's.
to be honest,
Yeah.
I don't know, I live on that side.
I know you
I
do.
don't know people over here as
You can
well.
live over here. It's a great area.
I love it over here. My wife, like I said, we're homeschoolers, and there's a homeschool co-op in Evanston, and there's one over here in the valley. And my wife and daughter travel over here, and they're part of that homeschool co-op. We love the valley. This is a fantastic place. I really like it, and I like the people. I don't know them as well.
I just think every voter needs to ask the questions.
Absolutely.
And they need to ask their representative, the people that are running for committee, positions.
Absolutely.
What their stance are. And I think that it's a real simple thing. And I guess we, as people in 3-1 and 3-2 and all of that area, could certainly contact you now too and tell you to put on the list. So,
Absolutely.
but I'm just saying that's on a definitive list if no one's reached out, right? So,
Like I said, if you know somebody that's not on my list and you trust them,
Sure.
by all means vote for them, okay? My list is just who I trust. And like I said, they're not all on there. If you know them and you trust them, then you vote for them. I don't have heartburn with that at all.
Some of the names that we chose not to put on there is because we know that, I'm just gonna be blunt, we know you're friends with people that shouldn't be on the list.
Well, yeah, guilty by association
That's
happens
right.
as well. Yeah. Yeah. But like I said, you know these people better than we do. That's obviously the case, and if you trust them, please vote for them. I don't know that at all.
So that list, if you wanted to see who is running for every precinct, that's on the county page. And you can find a list for every precinct, and it'll list every person that's running in the Republican Party. Then you have to go to the Democratic one, and it'll list everyone that's running Democratic side. If you wanna see that list, that's the easiest way to get to it, and it's pages long.
And if you don't know and you don't trust me, ask your neighbors. Ask people you do trust. Just, I guess what it boils down to is being an informed voter.
Okay, I'm gonna admit, how many times have I been to an election and it's like, vote for your precinct people. Oh, well, there's 2 people there, I need to vote for 2. I just logged it because I had no idea how important that job was.
It's probably
And
the
I had
most
no
important
idea how
vote
come-
you will cast.
Yeah. And I didn't know, and no one that I know would know that. They don't.
I believe you. Wasn't that long ago, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
It's the truth. Yes, sir.
I just have a question. You call the Republican Party Central Committee a private organization
Yes.
in Wyoming. And yet, they choose the 3 candidates
Yes.
to replace somebody else.
Right.
And they also can give money to PACs
Yes.
at a much higher rate than anybody else.
Now, the contributions to a PAC are pretty much unlimited.
Well, I mean to individuals, I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
misplaced that.
Yes, they can. Just like a company could or something, yeah.
And yet, I don't know of any other private companies or organizations that can do that.
Okay, you're right.
The
So,
company that I work for has a PAC.
yeah, a lot of companies have
Most
PACs,
of
but
the
what he's
oil and
saying
gas
is true.
companies do. The Lawyers Association does.
But what he's saying, what he's getting at
I
is
understand that.
true.
But the central committee can give it to individuals.
Right.
And they also get to pick the 3 people that the
Okay,
commissioners choose. to
you're
replace
absolutely
somebody.
right. Let me address that.
Okay.
When I had the decision from the 10th Circuit up there, right, it said the difference between internal matters and external matters are at heart of the case. On internal matters, when we're picking our chairman, when we're writing our platform, when we're passing a resolution, the state has no business sticking their nose in that. When we turn outward, when we're addressing the ballot, when we're nominating those 3 people, the state has a vested interest in that, and they can regulate that portion of our activities. Okay, so we are a private organization, but we've been granted ballot access that no other organization has, which is what you're getting at.
The Democrats do.
Well,
Yeah.
theoretically, in
Political parties.
Both of them.
Yeah, exactly.
All 2 of them.
But where we get that ballot access, now we come under their jurisdiction and we have to play by their rules in that part of our activities. Does that make sense?
Yeah, although I think every company, every private organization in the country is regulated by some form of.
Oh, sure.
I mean, we all have regulations, we all have all kinds of.
I can't serve milk to my children.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right.
So,
But we are a private organization that is regulated in those areas where we access external ballot, actual election kind of stuff. We're very heavily regulated. We got fined $52,000 for not doing it right.
well, but
Okay.
you have rights and privileges there that other
You're absolutely right.
organizations don't have.
Yes, I won't argue that for a minute. That's absolutely true. Any other questions? Okay, thank you so much for being here. And please, you know, I love words. You probably noticed that. I like words. And what words I really like especially are words that say a whole lot with very few words. I'm not good at that. You've noticed that tonight. I use a lot of words trying to say what I want to say. But when people can say something with few words and have a huge impact, That is so impressive to me that it just gives me shivers. That's where you get quotes from, right? From the founders and stuff. They said something in like 6 or 7 words and it just makes you, you know? Of course, the most famous one, I think, is, I know not what course others may take. As for me, give me liberty or give me death. You know who said that, right? Patrick Henry. Do you know that wasn't the most important words he said in that speech? And to me, it wasn't the most stirring. Another thing he said in that speech was, our brethren are already in the field. Why stand we here idle? I'm going to leave you with that. Why stand we here idle? Go out and do something. Thank you.
And thank you to Biffy also.
Absolutely.